In today's video, we are going to look at the RAAS pathway, basically the renin angiotensin aldosterone system, and all the important integrations as far as the USMLE is concerned. So, your RAAS pathway. And the first question, of course, you're going to ask is what activates the RAAS pathway? When you read vignettes, there are two things you're looking for. Well, whether you're reading vignettes or not reading vignettes, there are two conditions that you want to know about where the RAAS pathway will be activated. Number one is when you have a decrease in blood pressure and when you have a decrease in sodium levels. So low blood pressure and hyponatremia, or low blood pressure and low sodium, will activate the renin angiotensin aldosterone system. You want to always take note of that when you read vignette. It's going to be important. When the blood pressure is low, the kidneys release renin. That's the big way to put it. When the blood pressure is low, the kidney releases renin. You can go further to look at the mechanism via which the kidney releases renin. You can look at the activity of beta-1 receptors in the kidney. If you remember, beta-1 receptors in the kidney release renin. So remember, low blood pressure activates the sympathetic nervous system. The beta-1 receptor is part of the sympathetic nervous system. It's going to trigger the release of renin. Or simply put, when there is low blood pressure or hyponatremia, there will be a release of renin from the kidneys. So what does renin do? Renin converts angiotensinogen, I'm going to write it as AGG, or I might as well just spell it out. Renin converts angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Renin will convert angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. It is important that you remember that angiotensinogen is produced by the liver. It's a protein. Angiotensin is converted to angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 in the lungs. Angiotensin 1 in the lungs with the help of angiotensin converting enzyme is going to be converted to angiotensin 2. This is the first crucial moment. Angiotensin 2 goes to several parts of the body. First of all, this is the big guy we're interested in. The first thing angiotensin 2 does is act on the efferent arterioles of the kidney. Angiotensin 2 acts on the efferent arterioles of the kidneys. And what does it do here? It causes vasoconstriction. Angiotensin 2 will cause vasoconstriction of the efferent arterioles of the kidney. What will this do in return? Remember, we have afferent arterioles bringing blood into the kidneys. Let's assume that is the kidney or your glomerulus. And then we have the efferent arterioles taking blood out. So if we cause vasoconstriction of the efferent arterioles, which is like you're shutting down this part, there will be backup of blood. This is going to result in increased intraglomerular pressure. There will be increased intraglomerular pressure, which will increase the filtration fraction of the glomerulus as well. That is one thing angiotensin 2 does. The second thing angiotensin 2 is going to do is act on the adrenals. Angiotensin 2 will act on the adrenals or adrenal gland. And what does it do here? It will increase aldosterone secretion. Increased aldosterone secretion. And what does aldosterone do? Aldosterone goes to the kidney and what? Increases sodium absorption. Well, we should say reabsorption instead of just absorption. Increased sodium reabsorption. Aldosterone goes to the kidney and increases sodium reabsorption. So if the patient had hyponatremia, if the person had hyponatremia, then this will increase the sodium level and bring it back to normal. And this brings us to our first USMLE integration here. What are they going to ask you? You want to remember that whenever you reabsorb sodium, I just spelled that wrong. Whenever you reabsorb sodium, you lose potassium ion and hydrogen ion. Whenever you reabsorb sodium, you lose potassium ion and hydrogen ion. What does this mean? Anytime you have continuous reabsorption of sodium, like in hyperaldosteronism, or in syndrome of apparent mineralocorticoid excess, whether in a person with hyperaldosteronism, whether primary hyperaldosteronism, Conn syndrome, or a tumor producing aldosterone, any cause of hyperaldosteronism at all, you're going to have excess aldosterone. Excess aldosterone means you're going to have excess reabsorption of sodium, which will lead to hypernatremia. But what would this lead to? Hypernatremia, because you're reabsorbing a lot of sodium. Hypokalemia, because you're losing a lot of potassium. And metabolic alkalosis. Alkalosis, I can't spell, because you're losing hydrogen ions. So the effect of aldosterone on the kidney is to increase sodium reabsorption. Increased reabsorption of sodium will result in loss of potassium and hydrogen ion, right? Which can, in severe cases, if it continues, result in hypokalemia and metabolic alkalosis. So this is what you're going to be looking for when they give you, when they give you the labs, the interpretation of your lab values. If the blood pressure is low, it means that in the kidneys, you're probably reabsorbing a lot of sodium, meaning that the patient is probably losing a lot of potassium and hydrogen ions. So when you look at the labs, you expect potassium to be low, you expect hydrogen ions to be low, or you expect the patient to have metabolic alkalosis. The pH will be high. This is the second thing that is going to happen. So all of this is because of the effect of angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 acts on the efferent arteries of the kidneys to cause vasoconstriction, increase intraglomerular pressure, increase filtration fraction. Angiotensin 2 acts on the adrenal glands to increase aldosterone secretion. Aldosterone acts on the kidneys to reabsorb sodium. This will cause the sodium levels to come back to normal, hopefully, if they were abnormal. The third thing that happens here, so we've talked about the effect of angiotensin 2, we've looked at the effect of aldosterone. If you reabsorb sodium, water will follow. You want to also remember that whenever sodium is reabsorbed, water will follow. So increased sodium reabsorption means increased water reabsorption. If you're reabsorbing both sodium and water, this combination will result in increased blood pressure because of increased volume. Okay? You increase the volume of the blood, you increase blood pressure. You also want to remember that angiotensin 2 causes vasoconstriction in blood vessels other than the efferent arteries of the kidney, meaning that angiotensin 2 can cause vasoconstriction around the body, widespread vasoconstriction to a certain degree, and also increase blood pressure. And that is the renin angiotensin aldosterone pathway or system as we know it. The integrations that you would want to remember here are medications. So we have medications that can inhibit angiotensin converting enzyme. We have medications that would inhibit angiotensin converting enzyme. What do we call this medication? I hope you are saying ACE inhibitors. ACE inhibitors. Medications like captopril. Medications like captopril, enalapril. These medications will inhibit ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme. Now, when you're given a vignette and they tell you that a patient is taking an angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor like captopril, how do you come up with the side effect of this medication? It means that this medication is inhibiting angiotensin 2, right? So if someone is taking an ACE inhibitor, let's put that up here. Someone is taking an ACE inhibitor. The medication is captopril. You can think of others, enalapril and so on and so forth. This medication is inhibiting angiotensin 2. If you cannot make angiotensin 2, it means you're going to have less vasoconstriction of the efferent arteriole, meaning this will result in efferent arteriolar vasodilation. You're going to have efferent arteriolar vasodilation. Think of it again. If there is no angiotensin 2, there is nobody causing vasoconstriction to the efferent arteriole. If nobody is causing vasoconstriction to the efferent arteriole, then we are going to have vasodilation of the efferent arteriole. If we have vasodilation of the efferent arteriole, this will decrease intraglomerular pressure. Basically the opposite of what we had before. And potentially decrease filtration fraction. So this is how you come up with all the mechanisms and everything that's happening, right? You decrease the intraglomerular pressure, hydrostatic pressure that is, and you decrease filtration fraction. 2, if you don't have angiotensin 2, you are not going to secrete as much aldosterone, right? Decrease aldosterone. Because we don't have angiotensin 2, we are going to have decreased aldosterone. If you have decreased aldosterone, what does that mean? You're not going to reabsorb sodium. Decreased sodium ion reabsorption. You're going to have decreased sodium ion reabsorption, which can result in what? Hyponatremia. Most of the time, it's not going to be bad enough to cause hyponatremia. But if you're not reabsorbing sodium, it means you're not losing potassium or hydrogen ion, right? Decreased loss of potassium. And if you have decreased loss of potassium, that means you're keeping more potassium in the body. This patient is at risk of developing what? Hyperkalemia. Right? This is how we come up with the side effect of all of these medications. You just need to know what the medication is doing, what it's inhibiting, and then follow the pathway. Just remember the RAAS pathway and follow the pathway down. If you can do that, you will not be making any of the common mistakes that students make. We also have decreased loss of hydrogen ion. If you're not losing hydrogen ion, remember when we were losing a lot of hydrogen ion, we had metabolic alkalosis. If we are not losing a lot of hydrogen ion, then we are keeping a lot of hydrogen ion. Hydrogen ion is acid. So if you're keeping a lot of hydrogen ion, what does the patient develop? Metabolic acidosis. So when you're trying to figure out what the side effect of ACE inhibitors are, it's not, you can easily come up with metabolic acidosis, hyperkalemia, for example, as potential side effects of these medications. Decrease aldosterone, decrease angiotensin 2, ultimately you probably have a decrease in blood pressure because we are reducing sodium. If you reduce sodium reabsorption, you also reduce water reabsorption, so the blood pressure comes down. And this is how these medications work to reduce blood pressure. The second set of medications we can give are angiotensin 2 receptor blockers. Angiotensin 2 receptor blockers, medications that we call ARBs. Of course, you should remember the other side effects of ACE inhibitors, cough, dry cough, and all of that. Remember those, right? And of course, you should also remember the angioedema associated with them. But that's not part of what we're looking at here. Angiotensin 2 receptor blockers are medications that are going to inhibit the angiotensin 2 receptors. So just like ACE inhibitors, even if you're producing angiotensin 2, here the angiotensin 2 is not doing what it is supposed to do because the receptors are simply blocked. And you can walk down the pathway just like we did with the ACE inhibitors, and you're also going to be able to arrive at these potential side effects of those medications. And that's the assignment I'm going to give you today, to look up the side effect, mechanism of action and side effect of angiotensin 2 receptor blockers, and walk through those as well. And then I have a final question for you. What is the medication that inhibits renin release? I'm almost tempted to shout out the name. What medication inhibits renin release? You can put the answer down in the comment. Give this video a thumbs up, share, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the very next video.